case. And as we've seen, obviously it's the case that in the early times some programs become full. Not all, but some do. One of the frustrations we have a little bit is that people will tend to have that experience and not spend the time to, if the first choice program they have, that if they've gone to the website, as we said, and looked at what might be a second choice just on the basis that not everybody gets their first choice, that they have a second choice and can immediately try that, because many of the programs are not in fact full after the early hours. But that's what it should mean. And that plus the customer service plus a better website that is more easy for people to use, more customer friendly.
How much did the upgrade cost?
Actually, very little. As you know, server capacity is relatively little, and I would make the argument that we could even, come ahead financially on this, because if you can make it possible for more people to sign up for these programs, whereas in the past people might have given up after the first 5 minutes, we could end up possibly even paying for the server capacity and the increased customer support by the fact that more people will be able to sign up for programs who otherwise might have just thrown their hands up in the past.
Mayor Tory, when you held that news conference at the rec center in the spring, you mentioned that you wanted to see a complete overhaul of the system and that it would take time. How far does this get us in that overhaul, and how much more do you think there's to go?
They're actually two separate processes. The process that we knew that the overhaul of the system, and in fact the replacement of the current system, which is the Model T one, would take time, both in terms of identifying what we needed, identifying what's available in terms of vendors, and then going through the procurement process, which in public sector instances is very thorough. And so we're well advanced on that, and the park staff are working very hard on that, but it's going to take the time we said, which is it won't be done until sometime probably well into 2017. But in the meantime, we had a first phase of this, as it were, that said, let's make every single improvement we can to make the best of the current system. And I'm not saying we're finished with that, but I'm saying what we've done for this September in a very short period of time is increase server capacity by 25%, redo the website to make it customer friendly, add customer support service both in person and on the phone. And I think it should make things better this fall, but the public should understand that I, James Pasternak, and most importantly our great city staff are very committed to making it even better and the complete overhaul that we're underway with.
Mr. Mayor, can we go off topic just a little bit?
It's not off topic. Any topic is on topic. Well, not anyone, but...
There's a lot going on in government. The Wynne government just announced they're going to prorogue for a day and sort of, refocus and reset, recalibrate. They'll come back to work the very next day. City of Brampton laid off 25 managers. Is this a symptom of something that we are seeing it, frankly, in other municipal governments, something that concerns you as you and your council get ready to go back for your first meeting in less than a month?
I have viewed the fall, post-Labor Day period, I viewed it my whole life when I was in business and law, and of course when you're a student, it's sort of really in effect New Year's Day, because a new kind of business year, school year starts at that time. And we have an extremely busy agenda for this fall, and I've been spending the whole summer working with my own staff and my council colleagues to move those things forward. We have our own budget process that's well underway. I was in meetings for hours this morning on that. We have major transit reports coming forward. We have some significant discussions to be held that I've committed to with respect to revenues needed to build transit and build housing going forward. And then we have a host of other issues, some of which you might ask me about today, ranging all the way from, Airbnb to rooming houses to, you name it. And so we have no shortage of things to do. And we have a pretty orderly calendar, if you look at it now, as to when reports are expected at various committees of the City Council over the course of the fall. And those things then move on to City Council. The stuff that you see going on, I would like to see us perhaps address some of the budget challenges that we have in a way that doesn't require us to have one big day where we all of a sudden announce a whole lot of big changes to management. I'd like to see us go about this in try to find better ways to do things, to try to find ways to modernize the city, processes, so you can perhaps do it with letting people do it themselves with computers, which they prefer to do, and that kind of thing. And the same with transit. We're working well with the other governments to move all of these projects forward. And my determination, which I said yesterday standing next to the Premier, mine as mayor, is to just keep these projects moving forward to get them done. That is what we are here to do. And in the past, we've got bogged down with all manner of endless debate and so forth, changing our minds on things. And I think it's my job to just keep pushing these things forward with the support of my colleagues, and that's exactly what we're going to do this fall.
Mr. Mayor, the Tubbs deal is going back before council for debate in October. Essentially, the final contract signed in 2010 gave one business the monopoly over the beaches area. You said in a statement to me the other day that that wouldn't happen today, like you would not support a contract like that. What guarantee do you have to taxpayers that a contract like that, that was sole sourced against staff recommendations, would not happen again today?
Well, I think we've learned some lessons, first of all, from the entire process that, we were sort of looking at in hindsight. When I say we, I wasn't around, but I think people looked at it in hindsight and realized that there were better ways to do things, and I would certainly say there were much better ways to do things, and a much better result could have occurred. That would not have been a contract I would have voted for or affixed my support to or signature on, but it was signed. And so now we're in a situation, as will be discussed, I'm sure, when the City Council meeting comes, where I'm also a lawyer, and I know a contract is a contract, and there can be consequences for trying to not honor that contract. But I just think we have to be very careful, both in terms of the term that we allocate these contracts for, recognizing that if people are going to be asked to make significant investments, they expect a period of time to earn that back. But I think even more importantly, the scope that you give to people. I mean, without getting into all the merits and demerits, I would simply say that I think the physical premises of the restaurant are one thing, and all of these parks and beaches and so on are quite another. And that's one of the reasons I would not have signed this contract, and I would not agree to. I'm only one vote on City Council, but I would not vote for a contract like this going forward. And the ultimate fail-safe is that you, in the media, the public, and the Council itself will look at these things with a much more careful eye and say, is this in the public interest to do this? And I would have said in this case, with the benefit of hindsight, the answer is no.
Was Rob Ford right? It landed him in court, but was he right?
Well, what landed him in court was the way in which he described what happened, and I would only say that I'm dealing only with the substance of the contract as it is on paper, as opposed to what went on with regard to meetings and so forth. I was not here for that. I wasn't part of that. I wouldn't be part of that. I'm just saying the contract as it ended up is one I would not have supported, and I would not support today if I had the choice of rubbing out the signatures and saying, let's start over again.
Councillor Cressy says he's going to call for a complete review into what went wrong at City Place and left thousands of people without power for days on end. Number one, would you support such a review? And number two, what can the city do to make sure that these kind of extended outages don't happen again there or another?
Well, I should say that I understand there are going to be outages caused by a storm, such as some of the smaller ones last night. Those things happen when trees fall down on power lines, and I think people understand that. What is not usual and what is not acceptable is an instance in which, in a very dense neighborhood, you have, multiple failures in a period of a week. And I guess I was a bit ahead of Councillor Cressy in that I spoke over the weekend before last night's occurrence with the CEO of Toronto Hydro and was trying to understand the cause of this, but at the same time indicated that I wanted to have a full and complete explanation of what had caused it beyond the preliminary indication he was able to give me. I will say that preliminary indication indicated that a major contributor to the fact that we have had these outages is out-of-date infrastructure that we haven't properly invested in. I think if people think about this, they will understand the fact that it is not possible to build all the condo towers, say, in the area of City Place, and not substantially upgrade the electricity system to take account of those condos. And I think this is just one more example of instances where in the past we have been quite happy to develop projects, but not take adequate account of how many schools we had, how many parks we had, how much electricity supply we had. There are even, problems in other areas, transit, of course. And so I'm just saying going forward, we're going to try and do better at that, but I will be looking for a complete explanation as to why this particular neighborhood ended up being victimized in this way. No, not deliberately, but just through circumstances, and make sure it doesn't happen. Because I think whatever the complaints are about the age of the infrastructure, we have an obligation to do better than that for those people who live there, especially people who might be elderly and living on the 26th floor or something like that. And, I don't mean to make any light of this at all, but I've said if we had to get an extension cord, to fix the infrastructure, I mean, it's not that simple. You wish it were, but there's a way to fix this, and we're going to find out what it is and get it fixed while we upgrade the infrastructure.
Tory, right now, Councillor DiCiano is at Planning and Growth Management raising concerns about Toronto could run out of burial plots within 25 years. What's the city doing to find out just how serious that situation is, or is it?
I'm not aware of whether it's a serious situation, and I'm frankly unaware of whether there are any particular studies or efforts being made in that regard, and perhaps that's why Councillor DiCiano thought it was worthwhile to raise the question. And so I think it is one of those things where probably beyond what city experts might say, we should have a public discussion about this, because it relates to things that are very personal to people in terms of their own wishes about what happens to them and their loved ones after people pass away. And it comes down to the fact that it just stands to reason that in a city where land is at at a premium, we are probably running out of space to do a lot of things. And so we have to discuss all of that. So I'm glad he's raised the topic. I'm unaware of any studies that have been, I haven't read any, or that anybody's been doing anything about this, but perhaps now they will be.
Mayor Tory, you talk a lot about efficiency and running things efficiently. What do you say to those parents whose kids don't have school buses to go to school on? I mean, it's, especially since it just kind of came out of the blue. I mean, it seems to be pretty irresponsible in the TDSB.
I don't like to comment on that without knowing all the facts, because I don't know them. I sort of basically know what I've heard reported in the media about this. But look, when it comes to offering public services, we have an obligation, and there's nothing that would be scarier. I mean, if my grandchildren, if I was to go to the bus stop to greet them, which I hope to find the time to do coming home from school, and they didn't get off the bus, I'd be terrified, especially if I was in charge of them that day. But any parent or grandparent would be terrified. And so I think we have an obligation to try and do our best. We are human beings, those of us who run school boards and who run city governments and other governments. And so there are going to be times when things don't go as planned. And I'm sure the school board is vigorously addressing this as best they can. But I'm not going to be critical of them, except to say I know it's a really serious matter with parents who care about their children. I mean, I know the feelings I've had when I have been looking at my grandchildren and they go out of my sight for 10 seconds in a mall just because they're behind me and I can't see them, and I'm all of a sudden terrified. So I get this is among the most important things we deal with, and I'm sure the school boards plural will find a way to do better.
You spend a lot of time on traffic management,
Yeah.
making sure that there aren't multiple events at the same time, plus a road closure. King Street is closed because of TIFF today. Last year, I think it went fairly well, but this year we have construction on Queen, and streetcars are being diverted on Queen and College. Are you worried that this is going to exacerbate the situation, and what if Brad Pitt gets stuck in traffic?
Well, if Brad Pitt gets stuck in traffic, he'll just have to get over it. And that's not trying to be inhospitable to Brad Pitt. I'm delighted if he's coming to town that he's here, and I hope he has a wonderful time. But having said all that, I would say there is nothing in terms of a matter of this size, which is not the biggest thing ever, that we spent more time on this summer trying to do the right thing. And so we sat with the TTC, with the police, with the film festival, and we sort of discussed and negotiated. We looked at all the options. And in the end, and I think a lot of people, again, will understand this, there was a proposal, for example, to keep the streetcars running on King Street and just sort of have barricades and no cars. We sort of came to the conclusion, all of us together, that wouldn't necessarily be safe when you have these quite large crowds that come to be in front of the theater. And thank God we've got a film festival that thousands of people come and the big stars all come and so on. But we wanted to do what was safe. We wanted to do the best we could in terms of keeping people moving, both in cars and on transit. And we came to a solution that everybody signed off on. Everybody in the room signed off and said, this is the best we can do, recognizing the crucial importance of the film festival for these 2 weekdays that we will have some inconvenience. And so I'm sorry there will be some dislocation of people a little bit for the 2 days, but I think if they think about the benefits that film festival brings to our city in the biggest sense, they will understand, and they will know it's only for 2 days, and that we'll try and do better each time we accommodate the film festival each year.
Mr. Mayor, you'll be at TIFF tonight. At the weekend, the Red Sox are in town. People are freaking out that the Jays are tanking. Are you anxious? Are you going to any games?
Only a member of the media who would want to look at the glass as being at least half empty, if not three-quarters empty, would say the Jays are tanking. The last time I checked, they've just briefly and ever so slightly fallen out of first place after a long period of time in first place. And September has not been going well so far, but we have them exactly where we want them. There's people like you in the other cities who are going to be forming this kind of attitude that the Jays have fallen off the radar screen. They're going to do very well indeed, and I have great confidence, and maybe some of the attention being paid to the film festival will allow them just to quietly, do what they've been doing all year long, which is to win.
What are your thoughts about police officers being dispatched as crossing guards? City News has learned that last year 1,000 officers were acting as crossing guards. This morning alone, 50 had to step into that role. Is this a good use of resources?
You have heard me say many times that the best use of a highly trained police officer's time is not on things like crossing guards as much as we want to make absolutely sure our children are safe, or on watching people make left-hand turns they shouldn't be making, or on things like that. And so I'm proud to say that under my leadership and that of Chair Pringle and Chief Saunders, we have a report in front of us right now that says we should be getting the police service and the highly trained officers out of this business. We should be having it handled by competent people who can look after the children and make sure they're safe, but not highly trained police officers. And so I think we're one step along the way to actually addressing that very issue that you raised and trying to minimize, if not eliminate, the use of highly trained police officers to do things like that that could be done quite well by other people.
Doesn't the report aim